Hello, Internet. Long time no see. It's been a minute since I've recorded some videos. You can find out reasons why on another video that's on the channel, a personal video journal kind of thing. Short answer is I'm recording this February 1st, 2019, and if you want to Google January 2019, it was a month. Some things happened. Holy shit. So, yeah, I just, been busy with things. Anyway, fuck all that. It is 2019. It is almost 11 years since Iron Man debuted, since the Marvel Cinematic Universe joined us on the screen, joined us on the planet, graced the screens with brilliant stories and characters. In a few months, Avengers Endgame comes out, which feels very much like an ending to everything that was started with this movie. I don't know how many of the actors are going to continue on. I don't know what's next for Marvel. Nobody really does. So, I've been meaning to go and rewatch all these fucking movies for a while now. When the first Avengers came out back in 2012, I had planned to do all of them, Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, Avengers, and I didn't even do that. And basically every time a big movie comes out, an Avengers flick, I go, I should watch them all again, and then I never really do. I just kind of watch a couple. So it's been a decade, and I haven't watched them all in one... I'm not doing a marathon or anything, but I haven't sat down and just watched them all in order in a long time. So I'm doing that. Let's see, Captain Marvel comes out in March, I think, so I got about a month. I'm slowly purchasing them from Amazons and thrift stores and the internets and all that things. Trying to fill the gaps, but whatever. It is Marvel Rewind here on George's channel, and we're starting at the beginning with Iron Man. I fucking love this movie so much. It's incredible as a movie. Honestly, out of the 20 whatever movies exist in the Marvel Universe, this is probably still the best movie. In terms of screenwriting, in terms of structure, in terms of introducing a world, the performances are lovely, the direction is solid, the CGI is a little dated, but whatever, it's just CGI. None of that really matters. The effects don't matter so much as long as you care about the story. And my god, this movie is so fucking good. Circa 2008, the superhero world saw some changes. The Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, which had been the highest grossing ones, were kind of dying. The third one had come out and nobody liked it. The Dark Knight had come out the same summer as Iron Man, so DC hadn't revolutionized comic book filmmaking yet, and, hadn't thrown it in the toilet, as would happen later on with Zack Snyder. Hellboy had come out in the same summer as Iron Man, and The Dark Knight Hellboy 2 was coming out, which I know there's a huge fan community for. The X-Men movies were trucking along. I want to say X3 had come out, but we hadn't gotten the reboot yet with all the young James McAvoy of it all. So yeah, the superhero world was kind of in flux at that point, and people were... That summer, everyone always talked about The Dark Knight, and how that's going to be the comic book movie. And I got nothing against The Dark Knight. I think it's a fine flick. That's a whole other video series. But for me, Iron Man is the movie of that year, of that summer, and obviously in terms of the legacy that it created, holy crap. Let's just talk about the movie. Robert Downey Jr. is fantastic in it. I'd been a Jeff Bridges fan playing Obadiah Stane, the Ironmonger. I've been a Jeff Bridges fan, sometime since 8th grade when I saw The Big Lebowski, just like everybody else. Gwyneth Paltrow's an actress I have nothing against. She's great in this movie, though. It's kind of this is the movie that made me go, man, she's a really good actress when she's not like, playing Shakespeare in Love type pretty girl, whatever roles. Like, she's a really good actress. Terrence Howard is the odd one to talk about. So War Machine's not in this movie, but James Rhodes, Tony's friend, is. And I always loved War Machine. And, with me, if you've seen any of my other videos, if you can see the wall of movies behind me, that's shelf 1 of 4. So, or 5. Actually, I love movies. So usually, and I love comic books, usually when there's a movie coming out, the thing that I recognize from another movie or a comic book, I don't really know War Machine from the comics or the cartoons, but from Marvel vs. Capcom 2, the arcade cabinet, that's where I fell in love with War Machine. He was so fucking awesome and powerful. So going into this movie, I knew War Machine was eventually going to show up, and I thought Terrence Howard was great. He had just done Hustle and Flow a couple years earlier, and Hustle and Flow is another fantastic fucking movie, so he was on a rising star. He was in Crash, which won Best Picture, for whatever reason. So I love Terrence Howard in this role, and there's this moment towards the end, right before the climax, where Iron Man flies off and Rhodes kind of looks around the garage and his eyes land on the other metal, the silver Iron Man suit, the Mark II armor, and he goes, "Next time, baby." And that moment in theaters made me lose my mind. I was like, oh my god, we're gonna get War Machine. And then obviously that didn't happen. And I'll probably talk about what happened with Terrence Howard in the Iron Man 2 video. But heavens, as a way to start a cinematic universe, this fucking movie is grounded in a way that superhero movies hadn't been, even more so I think than Batman Begins. Batman Begins is a really, like, earnest, goofy, like, it's not goofy, I wish it was goofier, but, like, when you really think about it, it's goofy in that, like, Boy Scout, overly serious kind of way. It's not goofy in that fun kind of way. So Batman Begins started to take movies seriously, but, like, it feels so fucking serious to the point that it almost feels goofy in its own right, you know, with Zen ninja shit and, like, whatever. This movie feels real in as much as it's a crazy premise, but the second act of this movie is just a guy in a garage with a screwdriver building something and testing something, and they show the sequence in such a way that you really believe, sort of, that given this much money and this much genius, that a guy could invent a suit that could fly. And that really set the basis for the whole Marvel Universe, up until maybe shit Guardians. Even when they introduced Thor, which I'll get to obviously, they talk about in the Thor movies that magic is just another form of technology. You know, that's something we're doing with Marvel. What Marvel's always done in the comic books too is it's based in reality. You know, DC, you have Metropolis, you have Gotham City, you have Star City. They don't really exist. Marvel always took place in New York, in Brooklyn, in Los Angeles, in real places. And this movie really set the idea that you can have fantastical elements and you can have that in the world that we live in, should the right elements cross. What else can I talk about with this movie that's so fucking good? The score is fantastic. It's probably one of the only superhero movies from the Marvel franchise that has a memorable kind of theme. I mean, Avengers has a good theme as well, I suppose, but movie themes have kind of gone, you know, the way of the dodo in terms of memorable, whistleable, you know, catchy tunes. Lord of the Rings and Pirates of the Caribbean are probably the last ones that, and Harry Potter, I suppose, are the last ones that you could really remember how they go. Ever since Hans Zimmer and Chris Nolan got together, superhero themes kind of became, you know, atonal nightmares of sound. You know, that dugga wow kind of thing. This movie uses this really industrial electric guitar thing to the point that even later on in, like, Avengers and stuff, and I'm assuming in Endgame they'll do a moment too, when that guitar riff comes in, you recognize it, and it's awesome, and it does the thing you want to do, and it's the typical guy movie, like, it's, you know, cars and women and all that shit. When you hear that guitar, you're just like, fuck yeah, that's so badass. The score is great. The direction, let's talk about Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau is a director that you guys might not know. He is going to make one of the highest grossing movies of the year this year, 2019. He's directing The Lion King, the live action remake. He also did The Jungle Book. He did Cowboys and Aliens with Harrison Ford and James Bond. He's an actor. He was in Swingers back in the day. He's been in a bunch of stuff. But he directed the first Iron Man and the second Iron Man as well. He's kind of the architect for the Marvel Cinematic Universe in terms of putting it on film. Kevin Feige, obviously, is the guy I'll get to at some point, who's producing all this stuff, overseeing all this stuff, has a vision for how to make a massive universe. But Favreau was the guy who made the choice to hire character actors. Favreau was the guy who made the choice to focus on character moments and have a story that's about a guy in an Iron Man suit have not a lot of action in it. This movie's got a lot of talking, and it's got a lot of character moments. There's only like 2 or 3 kind of action moments, and most of it is, like I said, Tony on a computer or in his garage kind of trying to build a suit. It's not really very action heavy. Even the climax is kind of not that big a deal. Favreau was the guy who made it all feel real, who kind of decided on that naturalistic acting ability. And Favreau's in the movie still, which is great. He plays Happy Hogan, Tony's limo driver in this movie, who would, you know, obviously, if you're a Marvel fan, Happy is the guy from Spider-Man Homecoming, who Spider-Man has to talk to. He's the guy in Iron Man 3 who gets blown up at the beginning. Favreau is very much part of the DNA of this movie, to the point that when he shows up in an Avengers flick now, it makes me smile in the same way that when Stan Lee pops up. Obviously not quite the same legacy, but without Jon Favreau specifically directing this and putting his stamp on what became the first of a massive franchise, we wouldn't have the franchise we do. So shout out to Jon Favreau forever for that. Speaking of Stan Lee, I love the comic books of Stan Lee. His cameo in this is lovely. I never read an Iron Man comic book in my life. Still haven't really. I think I've read like Demon in a Bottle, which is the notorious issue where, you know, it deals with Tony's alcoholism. So I never really knew the character. I didn't have a lot of affection going into this one like I did with X-Men. I watched the cartoon. Spider-Man, my favorite superhero. Batman, I mean, I grew up with the 89 Tim Burton Batman, but also the animated series. This was the first movie where I went to go see it because of the actors, and it looked cool. Like, I don't have any personal connection to Iron Man besides the movie. So this is what Iron Man is to me. It's Robert Downey Jr., it's that suit, it's this time period, it's this origin story of a weapons dealer who is kidnapped and kind of hurt by his own weapons and decides that he wants to go destroy his own weaponry and all that shit. So for me, this is Iron Man. And in terms of creating a legacy, I'd argue that Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark, may be the most iconic character of this century. Maybe give it to Harry Potter, which technically started in the 90s. But yeah, I think it's him. You know, so much so that it's hard to imagine what the Marvel Universe does without Tony Stark in it. I mean, you can always have another Iron Man. You can always have somebody else wear the suit. But in my head, I don't know what you do without Robert Downey Jr. showing up to say a few quips, to have a few lines, to instill that spirit. He's like an overseer of the whole franchise. So much so they couldn't even make a fucking Spider-Man movie without Iron Man being in it. Without Robert Downey Jr. being in it. And we'll get to Homecoming at some point. But that's basically all I have to say about the first Iron Man. It's probably the best of the 20 movies that they've made. Avengers is also really high up there, but it's kind of a cheat because it's the culmination of 5 other movies. Obviously, Infinity War is fucking spectacular, but again, it's kind of a cheat. It's the culmination, or half of the culmination, of, I don't know, a decade of filmmaking at that point. Thor Ragnarok's great, but it's a threequel, and that movie's coasting on the idea of switching it up after the first 2 Thor movies. This movie had started it all, and it holds up exceptionally well. The sequences in this movie that you remember still hold up. It's not just nostalgia. It's the sequence where he blows the tank up just by shooting like one little missile at it and turning away. That sequence really holds up. The opening sequence in the Humvee where he's chit-chatting with the army soldiers and making jokes and no gang signs and all that shit. It's an amazing way to open a movie. It's fun. It's disarming. You don't know, like, okay, I guess we're here. And then when the explosion and the action happens, it's really jarring and it hooks you into the movie in a brilliant, brilliant way. And then for me, the best sequence maybe in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. And for a while there, I would have said it's the second best superhero movie ever. But recently Into the Spider-Verse came out, which kind of fucked up my metric. Superhero movies, for me, are all about that moment where a character, the main character, a spectator, the audience, whatever, but it's about a moment where, preferably, the main character realizes they can do something that they never thought possible. They can be a hero. They can take the leap. They can have great responsibility, all that good shit. And the best one is still from The Incredibles. There's a moment in The Incredibles where Dash... Oh, speaking of which, Incredibles... You see that? Yeah, Incredibles 2 shirt. There's a moment in The Incredibles where Dash is running across the water, and he realizes he can run on water without falling into it, and he just lets out this little giggle. And it's this perfect capsule of joy and amazingness that, like, it's just infectious. You just feel like that kid knows how special he is. The other one is from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where the cool thing from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse happens. Don't want to spoil it yet, just in case some folks haven't seen it. But for the longest time, right up there with The Incredibles, and now Into the Spider-Verse, this moment, this movie, the culmination of the second act of Tony in his garage, designing an armor, designing a flight stabilizer, figuring out how to put the mask on, what kind of metal is he going to use, interacting with the little robot friends, all that shit. The culmination of that is he activates his repulsor technology and kind of floats around his garage and papers fly everywhere. He can't really control it. And at the end of that sequence, he lands, and he, almost directly into the camera, he's like, yeah, I can fly. And it's perfect. Like, it's exactly what you want from a character like Tony Stark, exactly what you want from a superhero. You want them to realize that they're capable and they're going to take the chances. They're going to take the risk. They're going to do what they have to do because something has happened to them that means that they're in a darker place, that means they've changed. And I mean, the moment later on the couch where he's watching the news report and he realizes repulsor technology can also be used to blow shit up. That's a great moment too, and it's much more of a character plot moment where it's like, I have to go blow up the bad guys kind of a thing. But in terms of the joyous side of being a superhero, which is, I can fly. Like, we all want to fly. And, you know, from the Tony Stark we met in this movie, all we know about him is his dad died early, He's a billionaire, genius, playboy, philanthropist. Not philanthropist yet, I suppose, in this movie. He's a billionaire who is isolated. He, doesn't really have a family. He says to Pepper at one point, "You're all I've got." He doesn't have much love for his job. All he likes to do is tinker. He likes to sit in his garage and fix shit. So for him to, and then, then he gets captured and blown up, and he meets a friend, and the friend dies, and all. It's like horrible things. It's pretty traumatic. For that to culminate for him in this moment where it's like, I can change everything. I can fly is pretty great. Last thing I want to talk about is some setup for the other movies, the other Iron Man movies particularly. I love the fact that right away we meet a character who's got post-traumatic stress. Even before the explosions at the beginning, he's got daddy issues. He's got family issues. He's got connections to Obadiah Stane, who is kind of an uncle, father figure as well. I like that we have a character who is broken to some degree. And then, of course, the plot of the movie is he gets kidnapped and he's held in the cave for months. And the idea of Tony trying to overcome his demons is a big theme in these movies, particularly the 3 Iron Man flicks and the Avengers movie, or Avengers Age of Ultron in particular. And not just overcome his demons, but overcome the demons he created. It's always his fucking fault, Iron Man 1, he's captured by a group of terrorists who are being paid by his boss. He's injured by his own weapons. This is all his fault. It's the world he helped create. So it's really lovely to set that stuff up early on. Second of all, the bigger world picture. When they made this movie, they had no idea if it was going to be a hit. There was no, Robert Downey Jr. was an unbankable star. It didn't have a huge budget. So the notion of early on you meet Agent Coulson, who says he works for the Strategic Homeland Individual EL Division. Even in theaters as a kid, I knew enough about the comics to go I think that actor, I think he just spelled out S.H.I.E.L.D. But that was just a little fun setup for the fans. When Terrence Howard says, "Next time, baby," they didn't know there was going to be a next time. So they're doing little setups here, but they didn't know. But they still managed to lay it in such a way that later on, when we do see War Machine, when Agent Coulson becomes such a great character, even Jarvis has a line where he says, "If you're going to go to other planets, perhaps we should redesign the suit." I mean, that's what just happened. Tony Stark went to fucking Thanos' planet. So they did kind of lay the groundwork in such a way that it wouldn't distract you and be like, "Oh, that's just set up for the movie," which is Iron Man 2. We'll get there. They just kind of let these little sprinkled Easter eggs of things that made the world bigger for fanboys, but also were just kind of great texture pieces for the movie. Any negatives? The CGI is kind of lame sometimes. Some of the song choices reek of 2008. The climax is not awesome. If there's one critique of the Marvel Universe that is very, very true, it's that the villains kind of suck, up until very recently. This is the first one, and it's Jeff Bridges, and Jeff Bridges is great. Great fucking actor. The actual ultimate fight of it all, where it's Jeff Bridges in a bigger Iron Man suit, it works for the first movie, to see him go up against another suit. I do like that Tony wins kind of by using his brain, not necessarily his suit isn't necessarily better than the bad guy's suit. He actually has to be clever. That's nice. The imagery is kind of silly to see a big fucking giant robot. It does have one of my favorite moments, though, where the fucking Ironmonger suit, picks up a motorcycle and bitch slaps Tony Stark with it across the street to a bus. But, yeah, the climax is a little bit lame. Not in a screenwriting kind of way, but just in a visual, you wish it was bigger. But a lot of that is, again, this movie was not a guaranteed blockbuster. The budget wasn't fucking crazy huge. And also, you have to remember, this was 2008. Superhero movies were not what they've become quite yet. They were on their way, obviously. Dark Knight made a shit zillion dollars that year. But also, this is the first Marvel movie. We hadn't seen Tony Stark fights a guy in a suit yet. We weren't, I'll tell you this, I'll say this much for the first Iron Man ending. It isn't a big fucking army of CGI critters, which is going to be a problem. Portals and CGI critters, big army of useless soldiers. So yeah, it feels smaller than maybe it should after the second act with going to whatever fucking town that is and blowing up tanks and having a dogfight with jets. It feels like the ending should be bigger than it is. But it does work from a character point of view because it's Tony versus his father figure, basically. And it's a one-on-one fight, and it's mano-a-mano, and it's fine. It does feel slightly less than it should be, but it works just fine. It did not bother me at all when I first saw it. And it's one of those things that a decade in this movie, I know fucking every line of dialogue from this movie, almost. I know the story beats, by heart. So now when I get to the climax, I'm a little bit kind of like, let's just skip to the end already. I want to see the next movie. But that's what happens with time, I suppose, and the fact that this is the first of 20 fucking movies. So, 10 out of 10, 5 stars, great fucking movie. An amazing start to a franchise. Maybe the best origin story for a superhero movie, other than, like, shit, Tim Burton's 89 Batman and Into the Spider-Verse. Maybe. I'm trying to think of other origins. The Spider-Man 1 is okay, the Tobey Maguire one. But, yeah, in terms of a character becoming a superhero, specifically this character becoming a superhero, it works really well. So, if you haven't seen this one in a while, give it a watch. It holds up like crazy, and it's ultimately just charming and kind of effortless to watch. It's kind of like The Martian. It's just, I like hanging out with these actors. I like hanging out with Tony Stark. I like hanging out with Robert Downey Jr. It is a very effortless, just put it on and enjoy yourself kind of movie. It's shot conventionally but well, and occasionally it'll do some amazing camera work, but not in a way that's distracting. The CGI is clear and crisp. The action sequences aren't all cut to hell. The choreography for the action sequences are good. And again, ultimately, what makes Marvel stand apart, I think, even now, is those characters. And it all starts with the 3 or 4 we meet here. I will say that Terrence Howard's Rhodes is a little bit different than the Rhodes we'll eventually get in Iron Man 2. I like this Rhodes a lot. I would have been curious to see what happened here. But even then, even though it's different, I like this Rhodes. I like all these characters. I like this fucking movie. Good fucking movie. So, thanks for watching part 1 of fucking however many movies there are. I'm going to try to get all these posted up before Endgame comes out, including a review of Captain Marvel. And obviously I'll review Endgame as well, I guess. There are a lot of movies and not a lot of time between now and when those movies come out, Endgame and Captain Marvel. So I'll do my best to post them. Like I said, check out the channel for hopefully some more frequent uploads. Check out the personal vlog journal entry to figure out why I've been gone. I'm going to start doing episode vlogs. I'm going to start doing more specific director series about the Coen brothers. I'm going to try and do more content on YouTube. And hopefully you'll see more of Steven and Dan from the unbagging mystery drink videos as well. So that's it for this time. We'll see you next time with Incredible Hulk, which I like that movie. It's fine. Anyway, thanks for watching. Post-credits tag. Marvel's known for those, aren't they? So, in 2008, I was way deep into my, pretentious film boy phase. I got into cinema around about 14. I started writing screenplays. You can check out other videos from my screenplays. You can check out a blog called adolescentconceptions.wordpress.com. I'll put some text up somewhere to explain that. I started writing screenplays, getting really into movie, wanting to be a filmmaker in high school. And by 2008, it was just habit that I sat through the credits of every movie I saw in theaters. It was a sign of respect. It was a way for me to kind of sit in the theater and reflect on the movie I just watched. And it was also just a pretentious, douchey, I am a fan of cinema and I'm going to respect these names kind of thing. It was just something I did back when I was 18, 19 years old. No one knew about the tag for Iron Man 1. And tags were really not a thing. Obviously, there's been movies before Iron Man that did this, but they weren't. Iron Man's a movie that made you, have to stay every time there's a big release. I think Pirates of the Caribbean had one. You can see a monkey steal a gold coin, which explains why he's a skeleton monkey in the second movie. There have been, Ferris Bueller very famously has one. So they've been doing little post-credit Easter egg things at the end of credits for decades, but Iron Man was the first one to make it famous, and for me, I was just sitting there because I really enjoyed the movie, and that's what I did anyway. I sat through the credits, and the internet didn't know. So when the tag happened and Samuel L. Jackson popped up, I was alone in the theater. It was me and the fucking staff of the movie theater cleaning the theater. It was just me. And I kind of lost my shit because, again, I'm not a big Iron Man fan of the comics or anything like that, but as a Spider-Man fan, I know about the Avengers. As a Marvel fan, I know about the Avengers, and I knew what S.H.I.E.L.D. was, and I knew what the Avengers were, and I knew that Iron Man was one of the founding members. And I believe, if I remember correctly, Incredible Hulk was coming out the same year. Pretty sure it came out in 2008. And I knew that was coming, but I didn't know they were connected at all. But I knew the Hulk was part of... Again, I knew the Hulk was part of the Avengers. What I knew for sure was the Nick Fury in the comics was redesigned sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s. And Samuel L. Jackson gave his consent to let the artist design the character after what he looks like. So the Nick Fury in the comics, before Iron Man, already looked like Samuel L. Jackson. They designed it off of Samuel L. Jackson. So I'm in the theater and this popped up and I fucking lost my mind. Because A, that's really cool, they got Samuel L. Jackson, and B, he said Avengers Initiative. Like, holy shit. That's a big deal. And I know I said in the bulk of the video that like they didn't know it was going to be a hit. They didn't. It was just, this could have just been, if this movie hadn't worked, if it had been a bad movie, if it hadn't made money, this would have been one of those stories that geeks talk about in the wee hours of the night, wondering what if. You imagine if we got an Avengers movie? Kind of a thing. But it did work out, so yay. I remember having debates when people eventually, when the word spread, hey, go watch Iron Man again and sit through the credits. When the clip popped up on YouTube. I remember having debates with my friends about like, okay, who the hell is Nick Fury? What is S.H.I.E.L.D.? And explaining to them what it was and how like it's like a group of heroes. It's like Thor and who is Thor? Was that kind of thing. But explaining like it's a group of heroes, kind of like the X-Men, but like different. And they save the world. And oh my god. And they were like, well, that's never going to happen. Like, no way. I remember distinctly having debates with people saying, no way is that going to work. They're not going to be able to do that. They're not going to be able to afford to make a movie with like multiple superheroes in it that's going to be any good. And as far back as 2008 in the theater, the first time I saw it, I was a believer. I was like, I think they might be able to do this. I don't know for sure, but can you imagine if they pulled off an Avengers movie? And I was saying that to my friends right up until, the walk to the theater. The camera just stopped recording. I don't know why. Anyway, post-credit sequence. Nick Fury, Avengers is coming. I don't know what part of my story wasn't there about how I believed. Goddamn camera. Support me on Patreon so I can get a camera. I don't have a Patreon, but I probably should. Anyway, all I was saying was the moment in the theater, since 2008 in the theaters, I believe that Avengers could happen. Can you imagine if an Avengers movie worked? And I remember saying that from 2008 all the way up until 2012 on the way to the theater to go see the Avengers. Like, if this fucking works, we're going to see something special. So, anyway, the moment I saw Nick Fury show up, I knew something was going to happen. Bye.